Welcome to part 2 of the big bungalow structural project we're on. So now we're going to be pitching up the roof rafters from our laser level plates and our ceiling joist areas that we've got in. So where we're going to start is here, which is the highest point, ridge point, this beam up here. So the pitches are supposed to be 17.5 throughout this whole roof, but they're not. There is a steeper section which is here, which is ended up being about 21 degrees, so a bit steeper, which is probably better if anything. And then the shallower areas are 18, so we're not far off in the shallower areas, but yeah, with the level of that this has ended up, this is 21 degrees. So how I've worked that out and achieved it is as follows. So I've cut a template or dummy foot, however you want to call it, using 6x2 timber, which is the timber for the rafters. So I divide that by 3, 1, 2, 3. That gives me for the third of the bird's mouth. But to work out this angle, I'll show you how I'm doing that now, or have done that. So I've cut what's called a height above plate block. So this here, 105 millimeters. If I rest that there, you see it's flush there on the seat cut, flush on the top. And I've achieved that. I mean, obviously I didn't know this angle at this point when I've worked out the third. But I do know, yeah, that is right. So anyway, that on the top there, get a timber, rest it on top of the ridge, which is the highest point, and then on the height above plate block there. So now, I've already got a mark, but I'll do another one. So if I do a plumb mark, like that, then get my roofing square. You can see that 21 notch over, 21 degrees. That's how I achieved and knew that the pitch of this is 21. So going back to this dummy foot here, as you can see on that line there, 21, height above plate block, third of a timber. So we're flush on the seat cut, flush on the top. So we were reading the underside of the, because it was resting on the top there. It was resting on here, so we're taking into account the underside of the rafter here, like the triangle shape for that to get the pitch. So that's how we've got that. So what we'll do now is we'll cut all these rafters in this section here. Then at the rear there where it goes onto the flat roof. And once we've got all that in, we're gonna start working our way around, and yeah, let's get into it. Right, so I'm just going to show you how we're working out this first set of rafters here. So what we've done, plumb down from the face of that steel, march it on the block work there. So then if Fred holds the tape there for me, to the back of that plate I've got 2038. So that is the run, this rafter. We already know the pitch is 21 degrees. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to work out the length. So we've got, the pitch here is 21, so we press COS, cosine, 0.933 that is. So write that down. And then the run, we know that's 2038, so we divide that by the cosine of 21, so 2184.35. Don't necessarily need to read anything off the point unless it's over 5, so 2184 should be the length of our rafter from top of the edge of that steel to the top of this foot here. Top, because you always come down then the height above plate to give yourself a berth knife. Fred, if you just hold that in there for me kindly. Top edge of the steel. That's 2187 that is, so 2 mil off, but close enough. We're not trying to split atoms, so we'll get into us now fitting the rafters. Okay, so you probably wouldn't have noticed from that time lapse, but it didn't go quite to plan, this section. So what we did is pitched up the rafter this end, the same that end, but then with the steel in that section that's tilted, we were way too high above it for it to not work with the next rafters in that following section. So after a bit of to and fro, and we've moved the steels further that way, which is better now central on the pads. We're still not perfect over there, but we're better. We can get the hangers on there, we can get a good purchase, and we're going to have to counter batten the inside of the room in there to get over that steel. It's just a bit of a funny detail. So anyway, this is now 20 degrees. So just by moving it over about 120 mil or so, that's lowered the pitch. Steels are nice and straight once we've moved them over. As I say, they're now more central on the pads, which is better for the bearing location. So yeah, it's always good to show you mistakes. Well, you know, some of the things with tricky details like that, you've just got to kind of trial and error really. And until we had a rafter up, it was quite difficult to ascertain exactly how that was going to work. So anyway, we're there now. Next, we're going to do this rear section to lock that in, and then we'll do this section here. And following on from that, then we'll move over to the next vaulted section in there. So I'm just going to show you how we're working out these rafters and the location of where they land on this roof. So as you can see, we've got those rafters in over there, and where they're sitting is on that double 6x2 on edge in that section over there. So we had to continue a line all the way onto this flat roof. You can see this point here. So we've pinged a chalk line on all of these flat roof timbers, which again, this lines through with that double timber over there. So what we've got to do is cut another 10 plate foot with the correct height above plate, which is 105 on all our other rafters from this point here, and then we can sort of come in, come up and come out, creating a different bird's mouth to over there, but with the same height above plate that the roof plane's in. So I'll show you us installing the timbers now. So we've cut all the rafters in preparation now to start getting the roofs built. We've got all these common ones here. As you can see, we've got the hangers on the top as well. So this is all ready to be assembled soon. We've just got to cut the ridge timbers. We've got a pair of rafters in here now. So that locks that steel in place. Can't shift about on the pad. We're going to start filling this in shortly. And as you can see, we've got all these paired up as well now, ready to be assembled, which we're going to do tomorrow. So yeah, what we're going to be getting on now is this middle section here. I've cut all the timbers, which are just down there on the scaffold. So we're going to go along, filling it all in and working our way around. So we're almost onto this large gable to gable section here. We've got the rafters cut, there's 50 in total, 25 each side. Got the hangers now to the top, and then we're just cutting these drops for the soffit line individually because the brickwork's running out a bit. So as I say, individually cutting these so we can fix the soffit to these feet. I'll show you over here the bits that we've built now. So we've got this middle section which is connected into that gable, and we've connected it obviously into that gable over there, the vaulted bit. Done a nice scissor lengthening joint there. This gable's built now as well. So shortly we're going to be getting onto forming the box gutter here. A couple of fur ends and a bit of OSB and some lay boards. And now going to be starting to fill in where the valley lay boards are. So I've cut one already. So how I work this out, because this is irregular valley lay board, because this pitch is 20 degrees, this is 18. So what I did, got a piece of timber the same thickness, put a little mark here where it intersects with this roof, same at the top, put a small mark there where it touches the ridge, and then I paralleled from the steel, edge of the steel to that mark that here. Okay, and where I put that mark here, where this lay board, the same thickness as the timber, intersects the roof, I measured from there to there, and that's the rise. Then plumb down from this ridge to that mark, and that's the run. So if you're thinking of a triangle, you've got the rise obviously and the run. So with a bit of trigonometry, opposite divided by adjacent. So the rise divided by the run, if you press arctan on a scientific, that'll give you the angle. So it's 43.7, which is the plumb cut of this lay board. And to get the length of it, you can just measure pencil mark to pencil mark, or point to point rather. Or if you find the cosine of 43.7, divide the run by that, that'll give you the length of rafter from this point to that point. I'll just show you how it fits. Nice and snug. So I'm going to fill this all in now, work my way around, get them all joined in. Right, so I'm going to show you how I've worked out this tricky section with these small rafters here. So, as you can see, this steel is tilted, which is a very odd structural detail. The idea was that the steel would be tilted at the same pitch of the roof and be hidden within the rafters. The levels haven't quite worked out exactly how we wanted them to, so this pitch is 20 degrees. On the plan it says 17.5, but with the height of this and the height of the wall plate, we had to make it this. So anyway, what it means is that our rafters are going to have to sit on top of this steel, and we're going to have to counter batten the inside of the roof to get over the steel so that it's not seen in the inside. This is a vaulted section, so we want it to look nice and streamlined. So all I've done is run a straight edge from the face of the steel and marked it on this rafter here. It's common. So at the bottom and at the top, connected the points. So now it's given me this line here. and that tilt is at 4 degrees. So I know that because I put a roofing square on there. When I tilt it on the line there, read it there, it's 4 degrees. Same with the top, so just extend that across, mark it, come off 90 degrees from that line there. And then I can essentially use this as a template. So I've just measured from point to point. That's the plumb cut of 20 degrees. So I've done that, measured from point to point, come along 4 degrees, come along the width of the top of the steel, 152, which is there. And if I plonk that in there, fits flush with the steel as this one is here. Bit of a gap here, but that's because the timber's setting slightly more than the lip of the steel. So then we'll get a jiffy hanger on the top here and a smaller one there. And what we've got to do, because this steel isn't bang on level, because we didn't have enough shims basically, so I've got to do the same as this, that end, pull a string line from this line here, which is plumbing up or continuing the line of the steel, same at that end, pull a string line, measure each one individually, because the height above plate will change, because it's slightly, I believe, lower that end. Come back to you once they're all done. Okay, so as you can see, we've got a pair in, one at each end. We've eyed through and we've pulled a line from that far end at the plumb cut point. We had a template foot here, just moved it up and down until that planed in. So as you can see, it's about 5 mil above the steel. The top flat part, that planes in well. And to achieve the height above plate here, when our template foot was in, we just run a straight edge across here, one up the back here, measured to it, and then came back the distance that we needed to. So we've got one in here now, got one in there. That plane's in, so we just measure from point to point all the way along and get them all in. Okay, we've got these awkward irregular valleys in now. I haven't got much footage of how I've worked it all out, but essentially what I did is figured out the run from this ridge back of that plate there. Same with this steel to, well, the back of the plate there, which is in line with the trim we've got over there. So here's how we're looking on the top. Very awkward because this steel is tilted. We've got hangers, we've wrapped one around there. This we're going to screw through the top, this one we're going to wrap back over, cut it off. So yeah, got backing bevels on it. The bevels are marginally out. I'll show you how it planes in over here. So when I run the level across, it is going to the centre of the valley. As you can see, it's a couple of degrees out, so the jack rafters are going to be sitting slightly higher, which isn't really an issue, but yeah, it's been a bit of a tricky one to say the least, I'll be honest, this one. The jacks now, I've marked out where they're going to be going at 400 centres, so I'm just going to measure these with a tape. You can do it mathematically where you divide this space here by your centres and work out the diminish, but just for speed I'm just going to measure them all. So yeah, I'll do a time lapse of us in the jacks now. Right, that's this one all complete now. We're onto the oak structure, oak porch at the front of the property next, at the entrance. And then we've got the fascia soffit to install. And then we're done. That's this one wrapped up. So thanks again for watching this one. See you next time.